afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's CRPOA Off the Record podcast interview featuring investigators, officers Benny Huang and Andrew Mew, distinguished figures in the technology, data modeling, and investigations community. I am Dom Gamboa, your host and current president of the California Peace Officers Association, Reserve Peace Officers Association. We are thrilled to have them here with us, along with the co-hosts, CRPOA directors Jeff Knockett, Kyle Maiden, and a special welcome to all our CRPOA members and enthusiasts that are joining us online today. We look forward to this meaningful discussion, diving into their experiences and perspectives that they bring to the conversation. Benny and Andrew, thank you for being here, all our participants online. So let's begin this insightful dialogue. Benny or Andrew, whoever wants to start first, tell us about yourself and what brought you to this career juncture.
My name is Andrew Mew, and it was actually Benny that brought me into. I currently work for Broadmoor Police Department. I've been here for 2 years and work as a technician. Mainly, I touch work on all the IT systems, and alongside with Benny, during my day job, I work for Stanford University and Medicine as a cybersecurity engineer, and I also specialize in digital forensics.
My name is Benny Huang. Been here for about 5 years. Prior to that, with Oakland Housing Authority. What brought me to this field in general was, ultimately having done the military right out of high school. Had a whole mindset on doing service, do service work, but also at the same time, I do have a life outside of being here. I'm a solutions architect for a company that does data modeling, data engineering for law enforcement agencies that are out there. While here, I do patrol investigations and also work alongside with, as Andrew mentioned, anything technical that touches the department. So thanks for having us here today.
What tools would someone that's doing an investigation actually need access to?
So kind of depends on what they.
Yeah, I'd say the first new one is I think a lot of people are familiar with is Flock or something similar that's gonna be able to read people's license plates. I mean, that was kind of an early concept quite a long time ago, and it's definitely in play today, especially in San Diego County, and then very recently, all the way up from San Jose all the way up to San Francisco. But everyone uses it all around the U.S. now. And everybody uses to locate any vehicle that crosses, and then they're using some type of AI or being able to recognize and decipher text and make it a searchable within an application. So that's one of them.
Yeah, and then also that kind of stems into like the idea of, well, what do you do with the data, right? Because you have a license plate. Well, can you do something? ETL or extraction, transformation, and loading of that data, and pair it with maybe an internal database like your post management system, your computer aided dispatch system, your records management system. So we use all these tools today. We don't use it all in one place.
Right.
And we don't do it certainly with a data model. So the problem is we can model everything. We have all the disparate tools, like Andrew just said. We have all those ancillary tools. But the next generation of this is how do we put it all together? And that's kind of, I don't know if that necessarily answers.
Well, yeah, and then to expand on that, we're going from something that's being able to recognize text, and then with the enhancement in technology, we're also able to use an algorithm and be able to recognize facial recognition, and that's something that I think is fairly new to the public, but I think a lot of companies have been using it for a while. Now that we have technology that has caught up and being able to really utilize this type of technology, you're going to see a lot more of this similar type of camera and just a full expansion, being able to find people. Like for instance, Benny was able to find himself with a facial recognition, but he wasn't actually the main person in the photo. He was in the background of the photo.
Wow.
And this type of technology was able to track and find him. And this wasn't a photo that he took. It was a photo that someone else took.
Right.
It was pulled from a social media. With social
Right.
media. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of this type of facial recognition expanding in a couple of years.
It was terrifying.
Very terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no privacy almost, but again, that probably helps solve some of these crimes. So,
Yeah.
in order to, I think, taking a step back, then what, so the original question was, what tools do we need access to? And you walked through a lot of the databases, and now there seems to be there's these tools on top of it that are aggregating a lot of that. So is that something you see that there's going to be software packages that are available off the shelf, or is that something that the departments are going to have to kind of cobble together and need expertise like yours?
There's going to there's a lot of products out there that offer platforms and also offer services associated with them, and they run the gamut, right? Everything from a SaaS platform all the way to a do-it-yourself, build it yourself. And then you might have a savvy engineer in a large department. You might have someone build something completely custom for you. So it runs the gamut, right? Anything from let's say some of the ones that I mentioned are off the shelf. But then you also have data engineers that can leverage Elasticsearch, SQL, or some sort of a large relational database to be able to create these data models.
So are we headed back for beta versus VHF, where everyone have their own flavor of the database, and you have to do business with me in order to access that data? Or is this going to be more like where Kyle is going, where you have a master database and then you basically buy a front end to it that allows you to interrogate the database in whatever, in a user interface that you're more familiar with or comfortable with?
So it'd be a little bit of both, right? Like foundationally using a data model would require some back end manipulation in order to denormalize the data. But then you also have the front end piece, which is kind of the selling point for most analysts, and like, hey, does this button do what it's supposed to do? So it's going to be a mixture of both, and there's no one size fits all. It's just I've found that it's going to be very dependent on how large your department is and what you have access to. So, for instance, an LAPD will have the capabilities of purchasing some premium software because they have tons of money, and also maybe staff a whole team to be able to build something, right? Versus someone that's just looking for a complete SaaS solution and having their IT software as a service solution, and maybe just having the back end engineers work with the vendors, right?
Yeah. So are these the kind of so yeah, great point about LA having a different approach based on their size and budget and that kind of stuff. But I think most agencies are a hell of a lot smaller than them, and so that most cops are working for much smaller organizations. In a case like that, are these apps or are these front ends available to the regular street officer to kind of conduct an investigation, or are these the kind of things that usually require someone like you with a specific background to kind of run queries for them and then give them the result?
Oh yeah, so that's what actually everybody's trying to stay away from, is using people like me to create, so a lot of these vendors and a lot of these companies are catering their interfaces towards the street officers. In fact, a few of those companies that I've listed have already started on creating interfaces that are coded for mobile mobile interface, right? So
Wow.
they can access.
Yeah. So I mean, as you can tell, I'm sure everyone's using a mobile device, and everyone's in the cloud now. Everything's in the cloud. So all the data sources are going to be available. It's just that if your department can afford it, or the technology is there. It's just that some departments are having, I would say, even within our own county, we're having this one company create almost an ad hoc type of version specifically catered to us. And I think it can be transformed and transferred to another department or another county But specifically, we're contracting this one trade company to create this application specifically for us. Smaller departments, yeah, we are actually, Broadmoor is a smaller, very, very, very tiny small department. And we don't have the budget that we wish we had from a big department, but there are grant programs that allow us to utilize that type of application in the future. And that is how we would be able to fit in. And I think a lot of other smaller departments, there are federal grants that will allow them and give them the capabilities to use the same type of investigative tools as a large department.
Oh, that's cool. Great answer.
And are you getting any pushback or seeing any pushback from more traditional investigators? Do you see, some folks, especially in law enforcement, oftentimes this is the way it's always been done, and we don't want to change it. That mentality is very prevalent, I would say.
Well, yeah, and to your point, I mean, stepping away from that, the whole concept of this next gen technology thing, which is like absolutely leaps and bounds beyond. So let's just talk about the concept of moving to Office 365, right?
Yeah.
The idea, and we're struggling with that right now. So I mean, we're seeing it.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are some investigators. I personally haven't spoke with any that were really against using this type of new investigative tool. Mainly, it's just there to hopefully make their life easier and create leads to help them do their job. So we haven't had anyone really complain about it per se as of yet. However, we are asking for their input to help develop and further, move it into a direction where they are capable of using it. Because the interface that we have, everyone wants this button and this button and this button. It can get, kind of congested within a screen and within it, especially within a tool, right? And the idea is it's not going to be able to cater to everybody, but we're trying to make it as simplified as possible. So even, maybe an older, more experienced investigator would be able to use the tool, as well as a newer, younger, probably more tech savvy type of investigator.
And then you go back to the investigators that realistically are the ones in the room that are talking about, well, how did you come to that conclusion? They're always the ones that are going to question the results, question the leads, because they didn't do it manually, right? Well, 9 times out of 10, that's typically like if you had a hard-headed investigator that said, I've always been doing it that way, as to your point. Those are the only ones that, and so in that, it has to be more of a movement from us as a career field, right? To help convince folks that this is helping you do your job. Because I'll give you a case in point. We were having a conversation about that show, First 48 Hours, right? Well, what is the very first couple parts of an investigation? You're gathering all the data, you're pulling records from all these different systems. But what if what if there was some magic button where you can just simply enter a search, get all the things that you need that you would have normally not necessarily taken about 8 hours to do? You just won back 8 hours in those 48 hours, right? So the reality is, once that frame, that construct gets sold sort of to those investigators, that's when we're going to be able to overcome that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Really, the selling point is we don't usually have, or at least in law enforcement, not every data system is going to be integrated to a point where we can search in just one specific web application or whatever is created to be able to search all these different data sources. And we're just trying to, you're trying to make it easier for them. So instead of the investigator having to call another department saying, hey, have you guys, heard of this person? We got a hit out of here. Do you have a case similar to this? Well, with these new type of next gen systems, you're going to be able to pull all the data sources, especially within, hopefully within the county, and then later expand to all over the United States. And then we'll be able to pull all the data sources into one. Well, hey, there's a case related to this. There's same MO, and that sort of thing. So we're just trying to make it easily more searchable, so they can generate whatever lead and just be able to do their job.
Kind of. Where are we with regard to current law, current policy, that kind of thing? I mean, are departments having to enact, a lot of new policies, or is the state having to really look at laws? Because obviously, when you start aggregating a lot of data about people, it becomes very sensitive very quickly, and there's ethical issues and all the other stuff that comes with it. Are things? Are we? Are the current laws sufficient, or are we expecting there's going to be some laws and policies coming up that might begin to put some structure around this as well?
So I mean that's always going to be the case, right? With anything net new to an industry. For instance, like right now, right now from my assessment, it's too new to sort of tell. The first time this thing solves a major case, and that case gets deconstructed as to how it got solved, is probably where we're going to start seeing these laws come out. That being said, there have been numerous legal battles over like companies that have been in existence, like Palantir, about whether or not they're telling the public what they're doing with the data that they're collecting, right? And that's been all over the place.
Yeah, and like in today's age, I know I grew up in the Bay Area, and especially in San Francisco, they've been pretty liberal and very hesitant about people's privacy, and they're really not. Originally, they were not wanting to have facial recognition in public areas, but that actually has changed fairly recently, and there's been a very strong push. And I think for a city like San Francisco, I think it's inevitable, and I'm just glad that we're having it now. It's happening now than not later. And I foresee if it's somewhere like San Francisco who were originally hesitant, now moving forward into allowing facial recognition, I see other cities and other places also moving alongside with them. So I don't really foresee. I mean, there's going to be a lot of privacy loss. There's going to be a lot of issues are going to come up later on down the road, and they'll have to be addressed when it does happen. But in the end, people are on social media already, and people think that they're entitled to their privacy, which they are in a way. But if it's in the public eye, I'm sorry, all of your stuff that you uploaded on Facebook and Meta and whatever social media applications, it's no longer public. You put it out there, and it's already too late. So, I mean, I think a lot of it's going to have to do with educating the public and letting them know about where our stance is and how this is going to work. But if you put the data out there, for instance, facial recognition on social media, they're going to be able to. It's already on the public, so it's not like it's not like it's going to be private. We can't utilize that within the tools. So I mean, it's kind of hard to say, but for sure, there's going to be people who are going to argue that, hey, we want you to respect our privacy, and I think it just boils down to, it's going to boil down to the laws and the current, I guess, the current ethics of each department.
Well, it will be interesting to see how that whole subject evolves, because, like you said, this is all new, and certainly, well, it's not necessarily new, but the use at this level in law enforcement is new. And that's going to generate a whole bunch of other questions and concerns, and we'll have to see where it goes. Hey, I wanted to fast forward. So tell us a little bit about the class, Data Science to Solve Crimes. What are students going to experience? What kind of tools and skills are they going to walk away with? And how does this change their next shift that they work?
So very appropriate to like sort of this conversation that we have right here. A lot of it is the education of first the education of what's really out there, what's coming out there, because whether we like to admit it or not, all these bits of next gen technologies that I've listed from earlier, what with the data fusion, data aggregation, the data modeling, natural language processing, and large language models, is going to hit law enforcement sooner rather than later. And being an engineer, you've seen already how much faster it's exponentially grown the rate of developing products and features. So I can only imagine that it's only a matter of time before this type of technology takes over and starts enriching the data that we already have. That being said, for the first time ever, and I felt that it was necessary to teach this course because we can put all of the officers that are currently in service right now, or who has the interest, the capacity to want to know, ahead of that technology curve before they get blindsided by a whole bunch of absolutely new things and not know how to use it, right? So the tools are out there to be able to make the job. So what I guess the walking away with it would be the knowledge and to some level the skills to be able to adapt to this new technology, right?
Yeah.
An understanding of LLMs and how prompt engineering works, things like that.
For me, the hardest thing throughout my career dealing with computers has been passwords.
And this solves that problem, right?
You're not there every day. You show up and you need to log into Klets, and it's just like, oh my god, my password expired, and I got to go through 3 days of nonsense to get account reactivated, and that's been the problem. So come up with a database for that'll kind of keep everything organized there, and I think you'll have a winner.
Yeah, I got a question. Sorry, just about the class. Are you guys going to be able to touch on or demystify what is artificial intelligence? Because in your guys' community, I keep hearing different examples of how AI is just a term that was made up from either the media or a marketing group. So how much of your class is really going to narrow down what is artificial intelligence? And then the second thing is, how do you use that technology to not only solve crimes, but primarily for investigations? Because some of this technology, and then we'll just pick up on facial recognition. You can take someone's face and almost in real time, which I think was where we're headed with this technology. You can locate them, a missing person, in different databases at the push of a button. Versus years ago, it would take weeks or months to do research, or maybe days, to try to even attempt to find this person. You guys just talk about that really quick and expand a little bit.
Well, when it comes to AI, I think AI is kind of a general term. I think Benny can expand more on the large language model, but we're talking. I mean, I can give you a prime example. The other weekend, I went to go eat dinner at in another city, and I use what everyone else uses, Google, right? Because I don't know how to get there without Google. Here's the thing: when I enter my destination and Google tells me go here, when I go there and I don't move for a certain amount of time and I reach my destination, it'll also tell me your car is parked right here, and it shows right there, and it says this is probably where your car is, and it literally says your car is probably parked right here. I didn't know it did that, and Google is probably one of the most used applications, and it's taking all this data from everything and it's making it. It's putting it in a cluster, right? That's what every application does. It takes the data, puts it in the clusters, and then makes it searchable. And then that's generally what large language models are. It's a cluster of data, and then it uses an algorithm to make it searchable and become.
Yeah, no. So I mean, with regards to like the concept of AI, it's such a broad overused term. Where if you look at fundamentally where it stems from, like it belongs in there's a small subset, or a large subset called foundational models, which basically touches upon using learned stuff to find new stuff. Large language models right now, since the advent of things like ChatGPT have been out there, it's been more accessible than ever, right? People have the ability to go log in, create an account, and then give it prompts. And a large language model are very specific in the fact that it needs to be trained. There's a whole blob of text, and it generates human-based text on the other end. But I mean, would you consider that to be AI because there's no actual sentiency involved? There's no, all it is like a little, it's like a baby. You teach it, and it'll regurgitate only what it's taught. It doesn't know what's new idea.
Yeah.
So the idea that we call it artificial intelligence is just, I feel like, a more digestible term for the public, where like GPT or LLMs, like generative pre-trained transformers or large language models is a lot harder to digest because then I'd have to explain it in this way. But it's realistically what it is. It generates text from other texts that it's learned from.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've been struggling with, and I'm glad to hear you kind of go down that path. Is the media calls everything having to do with a computer AI these days.
Yeah,
And,
it does.
to me, the AI is the computer. The software is actually learning and modifying itself as it experiences different things, as opposed to I've got a database and I've effectively got a fancy search engine that's going to go through and ripple through 10 million documents in half a second. That's neat, but it's not learning anything. It's just executing something that's been taught. An algorithm is a preset lump of code that goes off and does a thing, and it does it very well, but that's not AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, people get confused though because they're like, "Oh wow, this is so good," and the reason why this has got so blown out of proportion is because you probably heard of like all these companies that are coming out with like these chatbot interfaces.
Yeah.
And they're literally writing things. They're writing prompts like, "Oh, can you write a love letter to my wife?" or something very simple, right? And it's coming out with these responses like, "Wait, a computer wrote that? That's too good, right?" But all it's realistically doing is, well, when this first came out, it was based off of a trained model of everything from the internet up until 2022, right? So, yeah, of course it's going to write something good because somebody probably wrote something that good before and it's findable on the internet.
Okay, we've talked about all these great capabilities. What are the limitations? What can't these tools do for us?
So
I'd say the limitations and what are the pitfalls that we should watch for?
That's a great question.
And it really depends on what aspect, right? Because we've talked about so many different aspects of these new next-gen technologies that when you started from all the way from the back, when we talk about large language models, right, one of the biggest fears is model hallucination, right? Is writing stuff that doesn't make sense, right? So how do you control that? Well, in my mind's eye, we need the trained data to be guardrails to be around the trained data. And in order to do that, you need a data model because you need the trained data to relate to other trained data so that the LLM can give a response that's relevant. So I would say the limitation is how much data you would want to put into that to train that model. And then on the other side, what model you want to use for your LLM and whether or not it's going to.
Yeah, so I think what I'm trying to say is that I think what a good example was when I think with ChatGPT, there are so many people using it now, and I think most people are just asking pretty simple questions and then trying to get just a certain answer. Okay, this is a pretty good answer, like this food tastes sweet. But if people keep searching it and they're saying this food tastes sweet, but it's not, you're pretty much training that question with the wrong answer. So I think that's kind of what Benny's trying to allude to. Is if you keep confirming like this food supposed to taste sweet, but it's actually not, then it's learning the wrong thing. It's like teaching the kid the wrong type of weapon.
So it sounds like well, let me ask you guys this specifically. And sorry, Kyle, sorry, Jeff, for me jumping in. Do you see law enforcement using Chat GPT for investigations?
For investigations?
So even creating or documenting a summary on your findings in an investigation.
So that becomes a whole legal question, right? Because then if you're using generative text to basically write a story, I mean, I still am a firm believer that a police report should still be written because you're written out on a person's own account, right? I think we're having something like ChatGPT, and I'm not saying ChatGPT is probably. In fact, honestly, I've been kind of in the world of building my own local large language models that I just download, from like a site like Hugging Face. Because at the end of the day, I need to apply it to something, some knowledge base, right? I need to apply it to some knowledge base, and I think where it becomes important is when it is touching that knowledge base. It can enrich like a big glob of text. You'll see in the class. I do demonstrate a portion of it where I take an entire, and this kind of delves into a little bit of natural language processing, but I'm using an LLM to do it. Taking a bunch of narratives and literally telling the LLM to read through all the narratives and make sense and give me a summary of a person's, like, let's say, criminal history, right? That's something where I can say, okay, you can use something like it, but directly using like a chat GPT interface.
Likely not at this point.
Probably,
No. Yeah.
unless you know exactly how to engineer the prompt to give it exactly what you want.
Well, Jeff and I are definitely old school. So you're talking about reading several reports to kind of get a profile of a suspect or something, right?
Mhm.
With your technology, how long does that take? If you tell the computer to read, X amount of reports, like how many reports, and how long would that take?
I mean, I can't. It's hard to for me. It's hard to quantify. But what I showed you the other day, I could do the demonstration I did was like 15 narratives in like 5 minutes,
right?
Right.
Well, I guess it depends on how long those narratives are. But
Well, it also depends on how much compute you have behind the LLM, right? So,
So amazing. I think your class should have been called "Push the Button" or "It's a Button Away."
what kind of class would that be, right? 4 hours, push the button, you're done. Good for everybody.
Well, I mean, just the idea that you would have organized information for you to consider to create a lead, right, in an investigation is incredible. And like you said, maybe in 5 minutes, depending on the size of the text. But that would normally take Jeff and I maybe weeks, unless we got a really good break on something,
Years.
or years.
Yeah, because you have to think about what happens when you read a document, right? A human person only can, they read it. They first have to understand what they've just read, right? They have to then understand the sentiment behind everything that's read, right? Like, is this written? It's supposed to be written objectively, but obviously there's undue bias in some narratives, and it's written a specific way. But then here's the one pitfall: the human brain can only store so much data ephemerally, right? So you have to now, on your fifth narrative, remember what you read on your first narrative,
Oh,
and now you got to say, oh, how does this make sense with the other one? You're not reading a book. You're reading like 10 disparate stories, all within the course of your investigations. And likewise, you're probably taking notes on a notepad that you're probably going to refer to because that's the only way you understand what you just read. So then when you leave the case and you move it on to somebody else, or your partner reads it, they have to do the exact same thing except this time you notes. So guess what? You get to be on
wow.
tape.
Interesting. Hey, you mentioned a little while ago about when this science solves a big case, right? Then that'll affect acceptance and that kind of thing. Are there examples where data science in law enforcement has really, cracked the big bank robbery and or whatever the thing is, or
Well, actually, fairly recently, I think about a week ago, there was an attack on an officer, pretty local, and there were these masked individuals who terrorized the officer's vehicle, smashed his vehicle, jumped on the hood. I want to say there was, according to the video, it looked like there was at least 20 suspects in that video. There was nothing obviously to do. He was trapped inside his vehicle. He couldn't come out. He was trying to assist another person who was injured. It was a sideshow, so there was quite a bit of people there. Many of which were either wearing masks. The department was able to make several arrests. They arrested 7 suspects using license plate recognition. They were also able to use the body-worn cameras to do facial recognition. Well, I don't know if it's actual facial recognition, but they just did body-worn cameras, so they were able to identify some of the suspects. And then here's one of the key ones: they were able to find them on social media. So that's, they, like I said, they put it out in the public for whatever notoriety reasons, and they ended up getting caught. So they were, because of that, with these types of technologies, they were able to, I wouldn't say close the case just yet, but they were able to make 7 arrests, and they are still investigating and trying to make more. So technology does help.
Mm.
And that was only 7 days ago.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it strikes me that I'm sure the FBI and whatnot have been leveraging the hell out of these tools for all the January 6th investigations that were going on for years, where they literally just have video of someone walking somewhere, and they got to backtrack who that person is and find them and where were they and what they do, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there.
Absolutely. I'm sure just from the facial recognition, they're able to create a profile. And I mean, technology is great as long as it's used by, ethically and by a good person. I mean, it could definitely really help speed up investigations.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do a lot. I mean, I remember back, and I don't even know if they probably wrote something. They wrote this out because I think they're probably going to try to eliminate our ability to do things like Google geofence warrants. But you can track a person's behavior just based off of, well, were they in the vicinity? Did they have any Google app on? And then to be able to write with a certain amount of veracity that the person was in and around the area, send it over to Google, and they'll give you all of the kill points. And, I mean, that stuff is out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, and there was another case which was a missing persons case, and it was a mother reported it that her child was missing, and they were looking for a certain vehicle, which I believe was the father, and he took the child and then he left. So they were trying to do their best to locate this one vehicle. It did get a hit and block. So they were able to pull the look somewhere around the general area location of where the truck was last seen, and then using Google Maps, because you can dive down and look in Street View. Detectives and investigators were actually able to look within the general area and use Google Maps to find that truck where it was parked at a certain apartment. With license plate and everything. Well, the license plate was blurred out, but I mean, his truck was definitely stood out.
But that's just as much happenstance as anything that Google Street View drove by the day he was parked in his driveway.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was just, it's like, oh, the vehicle was here.
I remember that. That was nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, technology is great as long as, you use it well.
The officer literally sitting outside right now. We use Find My iPhone to find the missing person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, both the officers that were working, she was on the computer tracking the Find My iPhone. The other officer was at the mall looking for the.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey guys, we want to respect your time and thank you so much for spending this time with us. Fascinating subject. I think people have gotten a little more in-depth view of what the subject is and what they're going to see in your class, and that's the whole point of these interviews, is just to share more information, get people interested in the subject. So, want to thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Kyle, do you got anything?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Cool.
Appreciate
All right,
your
guys.
time.
So for those aiming to advance their careers and create a meaningful impact in law enforcement, both of these guys' wealth of experience and classes they offer are invaluable. We extend a warm invitation to all law enforcement professionals and enthusiasts to join us at the upcoming RPOC conference featuring this class, which is a high-end class, and the instructors throughout the conference. It'll be at the Marriott's in Los Angeles Burbank Airport Hotel, which is located right across from the Bob Hope Airport. These classes are thoughtfully selected for their course material and insights. These classes will transform your approach to law enforcement duty. Seize this opportunity, boost your skills, network with peers and the instructors, and help shape the future of law enforcement. So the ticker is down below. Take that time to register for any of the classes, and especially this one, because this is going to be something that we need to monitor for the future. Anyway, thanks for you guys' time. Take care.
Thank you.